Alright, welcome back to the channel. Continuation from the last video. So obviously same day, the video was just getting a little bit long. So today, or on this video, I'm going to be welding in the chassis rails and starting to look at putting the floor in. Right, it was that hot earlier on that my phone turned off because of the temperature. So I've just cracked on, to be honest with you. So I'll show you where I've got up to. I've done quite a bit. I've got a floor area for where the seat's going to fit, and I've bead rolled it. I've got it sat on a piece of plywood at the back because it's just the right distance from here. I will make a little chassis section there where the original was. Just to strengthen it up, I'll do that in 2mm. I'm going to have to stitch weld it round there, and I'll show you why. Just up to the bends. I'll drop the car down a bit so you can see the other side. So before I drop the car down, I've just spent ages leveling it off. So it's on the ramp, it's a single post ramp, and it's quite old. So I've jacked up all the sections and I've got the car now level. So front to back doesn't really matter, but it's level side to side just for when I start welding in all these bits and pieces. So I'll drop the car down now and I'll show you what the top looks like. So I've got the car lowered down. This is my first attempt at proper fabricating this car, so go easy on me. I've never used a bead roller before, folders before, anything like that. So hopefully, I don't know if I caught it on camera, but we've got the tops of the chassis legs in there. That's the panel that I made in the last video. And then the floor section is gonna, I've got to drill some holes in, well, punch some holes in there, spot weld that, spot weld across there. I will eventually have to fill that in and piece up that section, which is going to be an L shape, just to add some rigidity in. That's going to get spot welded across there. That's 72 centimeters wide, so it'll make a little double seat. It's not going to be the biggest, but it'll be a little double. I'll probably spot weld a plate on the top of there with maybe a bead in it. That'll be the seat belt anchorage, because I'm going to obviously put seat belts in. I need to punch holes in there so that I can spot weld that down and across there now that we've got these chassis rails in. From the back, it comes across and then drops down because the rest of the boot floor is going to be lower. That had to raise up because the subframe's a little bit higher in the centre, and I want the boot floor, the original boot floor height, so that'll come across sort of and pick up at maybe about there. The tubs are going to be right the way down to there, and then the chassis leg will be the opposite way round and picking up from probably there. In fact, they're only 50 centimeters. In fact, no, I'll have to wait and see. So the chassis legs will go from there across and pick up the back, because obviously we want it strong enough to be able to be turned round on a rotisserie or what have you. and then from there, when that comes across, we're going to have to tie in the bumper somehow so that it's nice and strong. I may even just put a hole through here, a couple of holes, just for a rotisserie. In fact, that's probably the best bet. So right slap bang on there, we'll keep the original bumper mounts, but I'll have an additional couple of holes just for a rotisserie. So as you can see, that all needs spot welding, that'll want trimming at whatever height it wants to be, not too sure yet. If I take this out, so with the firewall removed, you can see the bead rolls. There's a little bit of an imperfection in it there, but luckily it's right where the firewall is, so you can't see it. It was a little bit too tight. All I did was these ones at first, and I'd already thought I was going to put a couple of lines in it, but when I did the lines in it, obviously because I've sort of shrunk or stretched the metal inwards in a couple of places where it was tight at the back, that's given me enough space now. So as you can see, that one's spot welded all the way down, same on that side, and then just at the end there, just wants a little filler piece where the chassis leg folded in to hit the box section that I did. So that's going to be my next job. So I need to take all this out again, punch all my holes. I'll show you the front from down here properly. So this just wants seam welding around there. I'll just put a couple of little tiny spots there and there, and then we're going to put a piece, hopefully slid right up to this from this section here, because that's a really strong part of the tunnel, that, and I want to try and tie that in as much as I can. These gaps here I'm going to do in 2mm plate. Obviously I need to fill that section in, and I need to put the plate across there. But in an ideal, well, I'm probably just going to end up doing it, but in an ideal world I'd have loved to have got all the framing out the way, but at least once the seat area is in, I've got somewhere I can sort of sit onto to do the work. But it's definitely coming on. Once I start building these the tubs, I'll know where I'm up to then as well. So I'll get, obviously that's going to go across and then tub up. So now this panel's out, you can kind of see why I found it quite difficult. So it's got the bend there, folded back. What I actually had to do is knock that bend out flat to get it in the bending machine, and then bend it on the block to get it back to position, and then it's offset at the bottom as well, and I had to do the same thing down the bottom. It's got a little bit of a wave in it, but once it's all in and straight, that soon goes. And obviously that's going to get put up to the next bit of floor, which will add a bit of strength to it. If the cut was there, the wave would go. I was considering putting the next bend on to meet up with the floor, but I just think that's, if I get the levels wrong, I'm not going to be happy. So I'll just do an L shape up and it'll work. Right, so I've got this prepped in place now, and as you can see, hopefully bang on level. I've used the clamps just to clamp it down to the plywood at the bottom, so we know we've got the right height. Worst case scenario where the subframe is, if we're not quite high enough, we'll just have to hammer and dolly just a little hump into there, which shouldn't be a massive problem, but I think it should be okay. You can see it's nice and level all the way down, and from the underneath it was absolutely fine as well. So what we're going to start with is spot welding all the way around here, both sides, and then stitch weld that little bit underneath. In fact, what I'll probably do is just spot weld and manipulate that last bend in just on them little bits at the front, and then we can do that bit underneath because we know that's right, and then we can put the back panel in. Definitely getting there. I'm really pleased. Alright, so we've got the top spot welded in. There's a couple of little gaps that I need to sort out. The front's seam welded across the tunnel, and seam welded into the corners. Bit of a gap on that side, so it's not as tight as I'd like. This side's a little bit better. Needs everything dressing down though. I've put the 25 or so kilogram block of steel there so that when I weld the next bit from underneath, we're nice and flat. It's just slightly bowed up because of the heat distortion, but once that's stitch welded in, we'll be absolutely sound. So I'll get the car in the air and we'll get our next bit done. Alright, so this is how we're looking from underneath. So as you can see, relatively tight gaps. I'll probably just have to use a flat chisel or something just to dolly up this side. This side's a little bit tighter, but I'm going to throw a couple of stitches anyway around it, and all we need to do is just do a few inch stitches around just that front section, and then seam sealer will take care of the rest of it. We then need to look at filling in these sections, but that can probably wait until we get the boot done. So crack on putting a few stitches in there now. Alright, so I've got that stitched in now. I am going to continue the stitching on all the way around. I just want to tighten up that gap first, and before I do this side, I want to make sure that side's done in case there's any movement. I've left the wood in there for now because it's keeping it nice and flat and it fits just perfectly. So I'll do that. I'll leave that in there up until the boot floor's in, and then we'll pull it out and I'll stitch weld the rest of it. I need to figure out a way of connecting from here to here because I want to get this on a rollover jig. So what I'll do is I will build a frame rail through, and what I'm thinking, I'm actually going to box off a section here because it's behind the bumper anyway, and put some M16 bolts sticking through. I'm thinking that's going to be plenty strong. So if I have two M16s on each side, cut into it there, so I've got to dress that up as well and weld it, we should be bang on. So I'm going to lower the car down now, and I'm going to work on just getting this side straightened up. Alright, so from the top now, you can see where the penetration is, where I've welded in that bottom section, and effectively what I've created there is a box section as well that runs in between the chassis rails. So that's going to add a load of strength between the chassis rails there. The firewall is going to be there, again creating more strength, and then at the back, underneath where the plywood is, I'm going to create another little chassis rail there. So the strength is really starting to get back into it now. And then obviously we've got the 2mm box section there, which is getting us onto the body, and then the wheel tub is going to go from there and join up to this panel, drop down and join up all this section here. So getting loads of strength now, and then obviously from here it's going to be tubbed across. Still need to cut out the fuel part there, but this is going to come across and meet up with the back panel for the chassis, so it should be incredibly strong. Alright, so just use some clamps, a spirit level and a block of wood just to level off the floor to tighten up the gap there for the spot welds. So I'll get that spot welded from the other side. I'll show you what it looks like now. Just need to obviously lower the car down, but nice and tight gap. Turn the welder up, get some decent penetration, and hopefully that'll be that firewall pretty much in place. Just once the welds linishing back, you can see the penetration there through from that back. Absolutely bang on, loads and loads of strength now in that. Alright, so as you can see there, obviously clamps are in position, see all the penetration now properly from where I've done it from underneath, and I'm now going to spot weld in all them holes. I will get it quite hot so that it seals it up properly. Hopefully it won't blow any holes. I've got a few to make good just on the sides there when I linish that back. Alright, so just spot welded the bottom bit in there and the sides, and I've dressed the top, so it's got a few little angles on that now, ready to be seam sealed. I just need to tidy up the edge depending on how it looks after a seam seal. Obviously need to flat back all the welds, but I'm saving that till the end. I'll get the car in the air now, get the clamps off, and we'll have a look what it looks like from underneath. Right, so this is how it looks from underneath. I've took the piece of timber off as well, because it really didn't need it. So you can see there, penetrated absolutely perfectly. Nice and solid. There's a tiny little bit of tin in there. Maybe I should have had an extra bead maybe down the middle, but it's strong enough. I can hang off this corner, so that's plenty strong enough. And then obviously the boot floor is going to come across there, over there and in anyway. So that's going to lap up to this anyway. And then, as I said, I'm going to make a chassis rail there. Right, so that's it for this video. On the next one, I'm going to crack on with the boot floor.